Let's be clear about a few things. Quoting someone's publicly available 990 is not smearing them. Quoting public statements that are posted on an organization's website is not smearing them. The idea that one has to speak to the CEO, CFO, or COO directly for a Jewish nonprofit to get the quote unquote real story is utter nonsense. A Jewish nonprofit which collects tzedakah or charity from the Jewish community and even from the non-Jewish community, but toward a specific cause, has to be transparent. There shouldn't be any issues of transparency when it comes to large-scale nonprofit organizations that are registered as 501c3s with the IRS in the United States. We're not even talking about Israel here or any other country. We're talking just about the United States. The idea that by asking questions on something that's available in a 990, you are somehow besmirching or smearing or being unfair to an organization is a joke. Let's be frank, it is a joke. Something has gone seriously awry here, as I've talked about before. When you consider how a lot of the news media is constructed, it's a big problem, particularly when you consider the concept of being what is called a meiser in the Jewish community. If you're a meiser, you're going to have problems with your kids getting married. You're not going to be welcome in your synagogue. You're not going to be welcome in the community. Period. End of story. And nobody wants to do that, or at least nobody should want to do that anyway. But the question is, how do you deal with serious issues of oversight and lack of governance without being put in a category that you're somehow anti an organization or hurting the cause? Because what's going on in the Jewish media is that unless the story... let me actually take one step back. When you look at the center-right Jewish media, a lot of the stories are exclusively positive when it comes to the nonprofits. They're not looking to promote other perspectives on a lot of these nonprofits. And the thinking, as I understand it, is that there's enough enemies. Why do we want to promote our dirty laundry? Okay, I understand that to an extent, but you need to have a mechanism of being honest and being accountable. And what I've noticed on a host of organizations is they intentionally or unintentionally use that fear and turn that into this kind of blanket security where the level of oversight is rather lacking. Now, take this out of the religious realm. Let's just look strictly at Friends of the IDF. When there was a lot of issues at Friends of the IDF, part of the problem with actually getting the story told is that people would hide behind the fact that A, they are quote unquote doing good for the state of Israel or for soldiers in Israel. People have good intentions. We need to be united. All of those things are not relevant to whether or not a charity is being accurate in its marketing or if it's something worthy of communal funds. Those are not compelling arguments when it comes to that. If, as in the case of FIDF, they were using very deliberately misleading marketing, they deserve to be called out. And when you approach them privately, not much was done about that. Certainly not in the first year of the war after October 7th, 2023. So that leads me to the main question is, what do you do about that? Because some people would come and privately say, well, I agree with you, but I don't like your methods. Okay, so what's your plan of putting enough pressure on an organization that they'll actually make change? I don't have the perfect solution. I've always asked that question. And I've never really received a response that was particularly compelling. So what do you do to ensure that some of these organizations cannot use the good name of IDF soldiers or widows or orphans as a shield to protect themselves from any criticism? I'd say the fourth criticism, or the response that some people offer, is they'll say, well, they're doing so much good. Very few things in human history have been completely evil or completely good. So, of course, there's going to be some good things. I've used this example before, but Whitey Bulger, the Winter Hill Gang leader, he was known for giving out turkeys on Thanksgiving. He's also a cold-blooded mass murderer. So, there's some good, a lot of bad. How do you possibly use the fact that someone's doing some good as an excuse to allow them to get away with a tremendous amount of bad or misleading information? If we're about accuracy, if we're about integrity, then even 20% bad or 20% misinformation is problematic. Now, I don't know the exact percentage that is acceptable or is unacceptable, but I think that we should be able to agree that there has to be a general understanding that people are trying to be truthful, people are making a real effort to be transparent, certainly in the nonprofit space. Again, I ask a lot of questions. I don't have too many answers here because I've run into so many walls in my attempt to actually just get basic answers from so many organizations. And it's deeply troubling. It's deeply upsetting. And what it does is it actually turns good faith people who are looking for genuine answers into antagonists. So if you ask questions about people making up stories on October 7th in an attempt to fundraise, you will automatically get no fewer than half a dozen messages saying you're on the side of Hamas, or we need to be united, how dare you question this, or you are minimizing the tragedy, right? Of course, I'm not any of those things. Nobody who is in a good faith way attempting to ask questions about people's fundraising tactics is on the side of the enemies of humanity. Words matter. How people that support America, that support Israel, make that defense is extremely important. And being truthful when truth is on your side should be a baseline. Now, I make this video speaking out because it is quite frustrating having to deal with so much smearing. One of the organizations that I have called out for lack of transparency and oversight has actually taken to tell others that I'm on the payroll or have a financial incentive from a different organization, and that's why I've spoken out. Utter nonsense. Perhaps there are some people out there that just want the truth and care about the truth without a financial motivation. And it might be upsetting, but let's look at Bernie Madoff. If you knew that your friend was invested with Bernie Madoff and you knew that it was a fraud, would you say something to your friend? If he's actually your friend, I would hope that you would say something. So in the same way, if someone's being misled in tzedakah, I think you have an obligation to at least say something. And it's unfair to simply dismiss any criticism as being Al Jazeera or Haaretz or the New York Times. It's an insult to the intelligence. And it also weakens the argument. It's similar to when the Democrats used to say that Mitt Romney was essentially a misogynistic racist, right? Because then when you have people in conservative circles who happen to be misogynistic racists or bad people, for example, Matt Gaetz is a horrible human being, right? But when you use the words that actually would apply to Matt Gaetz and his sexual misconduct, right? When you use those things on good, decent people like Mitt Romney, you end up essentially as the boy that cried wolf. And I say this as a conservative. So I don't know what the Jewish community does to counter this issue. I think it's very important that rabbis, certainly rabbis of communities, speak up and actually insist on some sort of level of transparency and clarity. It's not enough just that the organizations say they're trying to do good, right? I'm not even challenging intentions from 99.9% of all actors in the nonprofit space. It's just a question of how do you actually make legitimate checks in a way that is instructive and protects people's financial interest. People work hard for their money. They're trying to give tzedakah. They're trying to make an impact. Or even if they're just trying to use it as a way to get a tax write-off and a good social experience. There are so many people that really need help, that really need assistance. The basic thing that people can do is actually just ask for transparency and ensure that the money is going to the right place. It's also important to clarify, I have no problem with executive pay. If you raise $100 million and the CEO makes $2 million and the total expenses to raise that $100 million are, say, $12 million, I have no problem with that. That's well within the acceptable margin of what it takes to run a successful organization and to inspire highly talented people to work harder and receive more donations. It's not about executive pay. But if you're not doing the right thing with the money, then I have a bigger issue. I think that this is a major issue, as we've seen evolve since October 7th. And unfortunately, I think it's only going to get worse because a lot of these organizations now have essentially marketing machines. Because once people sign into the system, I should say, and you know that some of these organizations become a place for social networking and connections and business leads, then the cause almost becomes secondary, and the momentum of those organizations is very hard to slow, even when they're acting inappropriately. And there is a path of redemption for these organizations if they come clean and apologize and make amends with people that have been harmed as a result. But it first has to be acknowledged and called out. And the media, there has to be a space in the media to actually do real reporting. Because right now you can't do real reporting even privately and get a good consensus that it's important, because so many people are looking to make excuses. So many people are willing to look the other way because they have good intentions, or we have, quote unquote, so many enemies. But I don't think that because the genocidal maniacs in Hamas want to kill Jews, therefore no Jewish nonprofit can be examined. I don't think that that's a good standard, because, spoiler alert, there are always going to be anti-Semites that want to kill Jews and harm Jewish interests. That is a fact. That is a fact of being Jewish. That is a fact of the world. And we cannot allow the integrity of Jewish communal tzedakah to be compromised because there are anti-Semites. Again, I don't think that the majority of people that are consuming content or are looking to give donations are even aware of this problem, and that's half of the battle. Yes, there are some who know, that are connected, that understand the business model of places like the Jerusalem Post or others. But when you are in bed, as a media organization, are in bed with some of the charities that you are supposed to cover, it creates all sorts of issues. Especially, it's a small Jewish world. You have people that are on the board of a nonprofit and then are on the board of the nonprofit that is affiliated with a Jewish publication. Do you think you're really going to get the hard-hitting media investigations that everyone needs and deserves? Are people even aware of these relationships? It's a big problem, and I hope that community leaders and people that have ideas about this will reach out. I hope this can start a conversation so that there can be a bigger reckoning about how to deal with these problems. Because ultimately, people are working hard for their money and they want to give tzedakah, and it's important to give tzedakah. And the tzedakah, the charities have a responsibility to ensure that they stay true to their mission and actually complete the mission as they say they're going to do. And the people that benefit from this charity genuinely need the help. And my hope is that as many people that genuinely need the help can receive the help, because people care about them, people want to help, and it's very important that the money gets to where it's supposed to go in an honest way with integrity.